back at it again. Hey, you're back at it again. Hey, it's the G to the A-M-E. Getting free. Back at it again. Yo, what's up, guys? So another Black Clover video. Particularly because I've seen, I don't know, so the recent chapters came out and I feel like there's some confusion about what's going on. So I kind of wanted to explain it, although I didn't think it really needed to be explained, especially considering this is a series that its biggest issue is that it's so cliched and so redundant. And we've seen all this shit before. And yet when these last few chapters happen, people don't fucking get it. So let me explain it to you. Because even though it is cliched, the actual premise, what's actually currently happening in the manga is pretty cliched. They didn't explain it. Like, the way it's presented is slightly different than what you'd be used to. So I can understand some of the confusion. And I kind of wanted to discuss it anyway. Because I haven't really talked about spoilers regarding the manga. I've only really talked about the anime. And how much of a fucking disappointment that is. So we're going to talk about something a little bit more different. So, in the last few chapters, which I believe is like chapter 150, somewhere around like 147, 146 to 150, these last few chapters have been some bombshells because some major shit has happened. Black Clover ain't playing no motherfucking games, and I find it interesting the way they decided to handle this arc. So let me just kind of get into it. First things first, we've been fighting with the dude named Lich for the majority of the manga. I think in the anime, I think this is their first introduction to these characters. But they've been the primary antagonist since the beginning of the series, since the current where the anime is at right now, which is the whole attack on the Capitol, meeting Raditz and crazy bitch with her stuff I won't explain until later. But it was kind of like, all right, what's his goal here? What's the goal? And we find out in these last few chapters that his goal is to revive the elves. And the elves, which we've only casually heard about. I think the only other time we heard about it is from Vanessa's mom. I think that was it. So what currently has happened is this. The person who's sharing the body with William, which is the Golden Dawn leader, is Lich, but not really. He's going by the name Lich, but he's actually just a random ass elf. The flashback that we get in those last few chapters about the elves and the humans and their relationship, which that is stereotypical as fuck. Oh, humans fear elves, why can't we get along? They meet a human who actually has the same kind of level of power as the elves, and the girl, his sister, ends up falling in love with the Lich, and they are about to have a child, and then all of a sudden the elves are betrayed, but we don't know why. And apparently it's implied, we don't know this for a fact yet, but it's implied that apparently Lich used some forbidden magic which allowed the souls of all the elves to still remain. So they didn't lose the souls of the elves, they're dead, but their souls are still around. Except for one particular elf who was revived, and that is the person who's sharing the body with William. He's going by Lich, but he's not. And the reason why this is kind of confusing is because in the backstory, in the flashback we saw, it was kind of hard to understand, but essentially, the person who's sharing the body with William, the Golden Dawn leader, and is going under the alias of Lich, even though he's not Lich, is an elf who was watching this whole thing. That's the interesting part about the way they told the story. The story itself is pretty generic, but it's like, so the villain in this arc and the person who's been causing all the shit isn't Lich himself, it's a fellow elf who felt betrayed because they believe the humans are the reason why they were all killed. That's the implied idea here. So the person throughout the entire manga so far, up until these moments, has been a person pretending to be the Lich because his goal is to take revenge on the humans, and the first thing he wants to do is revive all the souls. Now, it's also explained that the most of the squad with him that have the marks on their face were pretty much possessed by the souls. Like he had to go. Now I think this is a little bit contrived, but the idea is that he used various ways that weren't really efficient to casually revive a few of them, because that's how Fauna was taken over. The big motherfucker who had like one of the best. I forget his fucking name because he's not relevant. He's also dead. So I mean, and then Liar, which is the guy that Big Sis Leon and Asta and Zoro are currently fighting, were all kind of half possessed or possessed through not Lich doing this extra shit to get the position to work. But the reason why he needed the magic stones and he killed the magic emperor was to get the final stone so he can do a mass resurrection for people. Now, a lot of people are confused about why certain characters were picked. The idea has nothing to do with the who was royal and who wasn't, or who, what it really boils down to is which characters had similar magical wavelengths to the particular elf soul that would possess their body. We were already hinted that this was probably going to be a thing, because not only have we seen characters being possessed by elves, we've also had mentioned specifically during the Gaunch arc, which I think is the last, I bet you will probably be the last arc the anime does, which is kind of sad, but at the same time I'm happy because they already have botched so much of the animation for this shit so far. But it's referencing the Gaunch arc that, like, oh, we can't kill Gaunch, and it was like, well, why the fuck can't we kill Gaunch? Like the girl says, like, oh, we can't kill Gaunch. You can't die. And we never understood why, and now we understand why. Because his wavelength matches a particular elf well, which is why he and his little sister are possessed. They're the ones who get shot with the lightest amongst a bunch of other characters. A lot of the key thing people need to realize is that it makes sense why certain characters weren't picked. For example, because we currently, now I find it also interesting that we lost 2 Black Bulls in the same arc we gained 2 Black Bulls. We just got Zora, and we just recently got Henry, and then we lose Luck and Gaunch. But I find it interesting because, remember, Noel and Mimosa and Mimosa's older brother, and I think even the Leon family are all kind of related to each other. They share a bloodline. It may not be like a direct bloodline, but it is definitely a bloodline. And if you notice, none of those characters are possessed. So there seems to be some type of bloodline correlation with it. They're like, especially even just using Gaunch and his sister. I don't think it's just a simple wavelength thing. I also think it's a bloodline thing. If you're in the same family, you probably share traits with certain elves back in the past. The question is that we still don't know is what actually happened, because we don't know how the elves died. Like, the way the flashback is told is from that random elf's fucking point of view, which from his point of view is that the barrier was shattered and all this shit was running down upon him and other elves, and then he died. And when he woke up, he was in a human's body, but for some reason he looked like Lich, which is the weird fucking thing. But there's still aspects of the story we don't know, and we also know that oh, well, look, Lich and the human both have 4-leaf clover grimoires. Yuno has a 4-leaf clover grimoire, and then you're like, well, who's the guy in the bubble? I'm thinking that's probably Lich's real body. Although I don't know how much, like, it's weird, because why tell the story and why have the villain currently be the not Lich if the real Lich is about to be revived? Like, that was just not Lich's goal anyway. He was going to use William's body to pretty much revive his clan, and he was using these other humans, the ones that felt like they were outcasts from society, who are all dead, by the way. I'm very surprised in the direction he took with this shit. Because essentially what he's done with I forget the manga's name, but he has essentially said, okay, fuck it. Instead of making brand new characters for an arc for villains, we're essentially going to kill the ones we've been using and then take the bodies of the other ones to create villains. And it's actually it's smart, because now we don't have to worry about playing that fucking stupid little game of, we gotta introduce a bunch of characters who will be fucking irrelevant in the next arc. The way he's just doing, he's saying, no, fuck that. We're literally just going to reuse the characters. Now, some people will argue it later. I think it's kind of smart. We also don't have to worry about a bunch of new characters being introduced, especially because there was already a bunch of new characters introduced in the last arc, and we still don't know everybody. And we've only been introduced to some of these characters just recently through the last arc, so that makes sense to introduce more characters on top of that. So the possession idea is kind of cool. The only problem I see with this arc is that I can't imagine a lot of these characters dying. I actually don't think most of them will die. Because think about it. I don't want to put this in perspective. You have, who is it? It's Yuno, Klaus, a few other Golden Dawn members, Lil, or Real, depending on the translation, Gaunch, and Luck. I can't imagine killing most of these characters, especially some of the new ones like Lil, who was just introduced. It don't make no sense to kill him. So, and the weird thing is the way the manga's currently going is in a position where it's like they're in the middle of fucking fighting. We need to have a break so they can regroup, especially because we just got Henry, and we just had this cool little team moment with Gaunch, Gordon, and Gray, and technically Henry too. So that makes sense for me to believe that they're about to have Gaunch kill Gordon or Gray or Henry, or have Gaunch get killed. Especially because Gaunch has been coming around as a character through these last few arcs. He's really kind of opened up. I'm not going to say he's my favorite, but he's definitely raised in the ranks for me personally. But I do like the idea of where this is going, because if nothing else, we now have an idea of what they're going to use for development. For example, I find it interesting, okay, you Luck. Luck being possessed is definitely for Magnus. We already know from the previous chapters, Magnus is like the only dude who took, I think him, because it's implied that Funeral passed. It's highly implied that because Magnus is like the only character who took the exam with Asta and the rest who didn't pass, that this will probably, and we know that Magnus and Luck consider each other best friends. It makes sense that they would probably use this to develop Magnus and Luck's relationship, which is my bet. I mean, I'm going to take that in a shot in the dark. Now, we also don't know who also is still left that we haven't seen that is possessed. There are there are other Black Bull members we have not seen at all, which would be Charmy, Magnus, Vanessa, and Funeral. There are 4 of them, and I'm pretty sure Yami's fine. I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say Yami's fine. We've seen Yami. I think Yami's fine. So the question is, of those 4 other Black Bulls that we have yet to see, have any of them been possessed? And I highly doubt Vanessa. Actually, I think Vanessa would be the most dangerous because of her ability she awakened a few arcs ago with her mom and shit. That's the next level shit. And so it's like, okay. So Vanessa, I doubt. Magnus, I highly doubt, because it wouldn't make sense to have Magnus possessed, especially possessing Luck. Like, if my theory about them using this whole thing with Luck and the other characters to force progression with other characters, Magnus and Luck need to be on opposite sides. They can't be on the same sides. And Magnus needs to develop more than Luck does. So I don't think Magnus is. I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say Vanessa isn't. Charmy, maybe. But once again, her character hasn't really been fleshed out at all, really. Charmy's like the least fleshed out of the Black Bulls, so I don't think Vanessa maybe, but I don't believe Charmy is, and I definitely don't believe Magnus is. Funeral, I would almost argue the same thing. I'm very leaning towards probably not, especially because the dude's still injured and unconscious. So, granted, and there's not a lot of drama that can come from it. So then the question becomes, okay, and then we also know through the possession, through these recent chapters, that apparently when you're possessed, this isn't like a normal possession, because these characters, although I think they're still using the same elements as their base bodies are, they are severely jacked up. Like they're all stronger than normal, which works because especially if Magnus, specifically using the Magnus and Luck example, if this is going to be a moment for Magnus to grow and to stop Luck, Luck needs to be a challenge. And Luck and Magnus currently, I think I would argue around the same level right now. Although I think Luck has always been stronger than Magnus. It just wasn't by like an insane gap as I would argue it is now, which is the point, because it's probably going to be used to develop. Granted, we have to be able to have a break in this arc for them to retreat and regroup while the elves sit there and plan their revenge. I also don't know. But the problem I'm having currently is that, okay, You're having this story being played out currently. This arc is being played out by a person impersonating Lich, meaning Lich himself. We don't know what his true feelings were, because by the time Mr. Not Lich woke up, Lich was already dead. The real one was already dead. So I'm curious about, okay, well, if that's the case, why the question becomes, why tell the story? Why have the flashback in this setup be told through a third person perspective if that doesn't have any bearing on the situation? Now, because Black Clover is cliched, it could be a simple situation where, since there are pieces in that flashback we don't know. We don't know what were the events that led up to killing the elves. We just know the elves were killed, and the elves assume it was humans, hence why as soon as the motherfuckers wake up in their new bodies, the first thing they choose to do is attack motherfuckers. So the question then becomes, okay, if that's how we're going to do this, is that Lich and the human are the only two characters who would know. I'm pretty sure Yuno's going to get possessed by Lich, but then brings up the question who the body belongs to. Because that's another thing. Okay, there's a body in the orb, and it's implied to be the Lich's. It looks like the Lich's, but it doesn't make sense, because if the Lich died, why does he still have a body? I don't fucking know. There's a bunch of shit we don't know yet. But for those who are just generally confused about what's going on, that's the simple version. The person who we thought was the Lich this entire time is not Lich. He's an elf who witnessed the events but doesn't know the whole story, but knows as much as he knows, and is based off of that assumption, believes that the humans betrayed Lich. He doesn't trust the motherfuckers, and they all need to die, and has spent the entirety of the manga so far reviving his clan so they can all repossess new bodies and take revenge on the humans that killed them long ago, because fuck humans. That's essentially what it is. And it has the only basis behind which humans are chose, I think, has something to do with bloodline, and I think has something to do with compatibility. The body's compatible, and that probably means other characters in blood, which makes sense why a bunch of nobles aren't affected. I would also and based off my hypothesis, this also implies that none of Noel's brothers and sisters are possessed either. It wouldn't make sense. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to possess, what's her fucking name? What is her name? The one that has a crush on Yami and, like, it's all about this women shit. Like, I think it's the Blue Rose. I forget the girl's name, the woman's name. It wouldn't surprise me if she was possessed, because, as I said, I think this is going to also be used not only to address the elf situation, we'll also get some backstory on what Asta's 5 Clover Grimoire is about. But this is also going to be used for development, which is why I say certain members might be taken in and taken out. I have a sneaking suspicion that we've already lost all the Black Bull members we're going to lose, because we've only lost 2. And ironically enough, it's in the same arc you just introduced me to 2. Technically, Zora was introduced the previous arc, but he's officially a Black Bull in this arc. Henry's like an unofficial, official Black Bull. So I highly, and I think this will make, the reason why Gaunch was probably picked is because, of course, Gray and Gordon have we've already seen through the other arcs, Gray and Gordon have the closest relationship with Gaunch, especially through this fight that just took place. Gray and Gordon have the closest relationship with Gaunch, so it makes sense that, of course, we have to now fight Gaunch for some type of emotional internal conflict, which is going to be especially hard because Gordon's techniques aren't really used well in not killing people. Because that's the other kicker with this arc, these fights that are going to come up. They have to fight their friends without killing them, and we already know because of Fauna during the Vanessa arc, which is technically not I call it the Vanessa arc, but it's also like the fixing Asta arc, but it's Vanessa arc pretty much. We know through the Vanessa arc, Fauna was another character who was possessed and was able to break out of it. So we already know that that's how this is probably going to go. But the interesting thing about this arc will be to see which characters handle which enemies. Like I said, I'm almost 90% sure that Magnus and Luck have to fight. There's no reason to. Also, I'd be curious if this leads into more of the lineage of those characters, because we know very, ironically enough, now that I think about it, Luck and Gaunch are like the only 2 characters we know of currently who are now either orphans or were orphans at the time. Gaunch's family lineage isn't really well known, and Lux isn't because his mother's gone. The other characters is not really the same. Although there are characters we don't know anything about, there are also characters that we know that we don't know anything about. But yeah, this is just kind of a general discussion. I'm very interested to see where Black Clover is heading, and I'm probably going to start picking up the volumes because I think I've reread Black Clover's manga at least 4 or 5 times. And it's weird. I think I'm just back in that mood. I'm also still need to make the distinction if I'm going to buy Dr. Stone and everything. But for those who don't know, now you know. Hopefully this makes sense and we can make some interesting discussion in the comments section. Because I don't really see that much Black Clover representation, which is partially due to the fact because of how the manga is. The other part is probably that maybe not as many people are into it, or it doesn't rake in the views like that, which I don't give a damn about. I'm lying. I care somewhat, or else I wouldn't make YouTube videos. Anyways, that's it for me. Life's a game. Play to win, and I will catch you guys later. Peace out. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And get ready for the Elven Revenge arc.